Today's episode is brought to you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Mike and Tom are washing their mouths out with soap because the Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. Here we are, still with the Harry Potter edition. My name is Michael Shantz. With me, of course, is Tom Stewart from Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello to everyone, Tom.
You may not like it, Minister, but you can't deny Dumbledore's got style. Is the music?
Oh, come on. You're diminishing that line a little bit. That's great stuff, Shacklebot.
If the music is, that is the music that comes after that line in everyone's heads.
No, it's not. You're making up stories.
Hey, I like
this monster.
This is one of my preferred Potters, as I've decided to start calling them.
Right. So this is what's difficult for me is that, as you know, I really like all of these movies. And yet, I ranked this one second to last.
Yeah. I'm interested
which is hard for me
why.
to... Well, they all got to go somewhere, Tom. You know?
Yeah, but this is I think a shot in the arm for the franchise.
Well, it's certainly... So we have a new director. This is a 2007 film directed by David Yates.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from Harry Potter, you know, he does all the rest of the Potter movies. He's doing all the Fantastic Beast movies.
Yeah.
And other than that, he did like the new Legend of Tarzan, which was kind of a mess.
But yet another movie I've never even heard of.
Oh yeah. It's with a Skarsgård.
A Skarsgård.
Yeah.
That's as close as we can get.
But I agree with you completely that, at least in this first movie, it is a bit of a shot in the arm, the look of the movie. Again, we're getting darker, forever darker, as each movie progresses. You can always look to the Warner Brothers logo to find out how dark the movie is.
Exactly the thing. It's like a little tone card for the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa,
and I think
this one's gonna have a murder in it.
Right. I think you said in one of the previous podcasts, one of the previous episodes, that eventually it's just like a rusted out iron gate.
Yeah.
The Warner Brothers logo, and that's where you know we're in for a dark, dirty time.
Yeah, and also the franchise is way past its best. At least that's what I'm reading into it. That might have more to do with me than the movie.
Well, that sounds pretty derogatory, considering you just said this is one of your preferred Potters.
Yeah, no,
where's this one ranked for you? I forget.
This was third.
Okay.
And I said
it's up there.
And I said it was a good movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Excuse the accidental poetry, but I really like how David Yates came out of the gates. The rusty wrought iron gate, in fact, of Harry Potter. He's got a very clear and fresh take, visually and thematically, on the Potter movies. And it's all about marrying the old world whimsy of the Harry Potter universe to what's going on in contemporary Britain. And that comes across very strongly in this movie. I think part of it is sort of what Cuarón was going for directorially. But I suppose the big difference is that, Cuarón has other tricks up his sleeve. And, this is all David Yates has. This is like his Seth Rogen dice dance move in Knocked Up. You know, it's like that's all he's got. Sorry that example's not from a sequel, but I don't think it happens in This Is 40, so I had to say knocked up.
Right. Yeah, you can't go there.
So that's kind of my feeling that, you know, even by the end of the movie, I'm tiring of this kind of shtick of contemporizing everything. And then by like the third and fourth movie he's done, I'm beyond bored with it.
Uh-huh.
So I suppose the ranking is partly reflective of you know, my waning interest in this one idea that he kind of peddles again and again and again.
Okay.
You know, I by the last movie, I don't need to see a dragon flying by a major London landmark anymore.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
So yeah,
and at the beginning of this movie, we have the, you know, racing past Big Ben and on the brooms, and is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah, and also, I mean, visually, yeah, absolutely. You know, it is quite striking to see, you know, the visual language of fantasy, and the way it kind of suddenly appears in a very recognizable modern Britain. Like, I think that's really striking.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just, you know, how real world it all feels, the graffitied underpass, the kids from, you know, from the rough houses being attacked in the tunnel. It's you know, it's a really arresting way to get back into the franchise, you know, which can sort of whimsy itself out of existence sometimes.
Yeah, and we spoke in the first, you know, certainly that first sequel directed by Chris Columbus,
Right.
And I had mentioned that movie is shot through the magic goggles, or through the goggles of the word magic.
Yes.
And of course, as the movies go on, that's drained out of the directorial style, and you're speaking to that. And that front scene where Harry, you know, is confronted by Dudley and all of his, you know, bully friends, and then confronted by Dementors, you know, in the graffiti, you know, yeah, that all speaks to that.
And it, you know, it's what Cuarón did at the beginning of Prisoner of Azkaban to some extent, but here it feels grittier, definitely more modern. And you know, I just think about what's going on in Britain in 2007. You know, what's on people's minds, the kind of Britain's involvement in the Iraq War, the state manipulating the media, more state involvement in education, you know, what the kind of ethical quandaries that accompany, you know, our worries about what allying ourselves to, you know, to the US, to George W. Bush in an illegal war in Iraq has done to our culture. And all that is there in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was struck, like, I could immediately connect it to those things, even it, you know, being like 15 years ago. But I lived in Britain at that time, and I know what was in the newspapers every day, and the screenwriters and J.K. Rowling presumably are really tapping into to hot button issues politically through this
well, you
this
have
fantasy
a whole
guise
ministry, and with Umbridge, and the school is put upon, and you know the state is trying to control whatever the magicians. The wizards and the witches.
I'm not oblivious to the fact that one of the reasons I probably prefer this is that, you know, it's more palatable to me because it feels more like an espionage movie or a war movie, like something I can really get my teeth into. And it
something James Bond like.
Yeah. Well, you know, and generically it like front loads a lot of things I like. So everything to do with that kind of London magic underworld which, you know, also from a production design standpoint is absolutely stunning. The kind of the black tile and the Art Deco elevator and the Orwellian banner art. It's gorgeous. So it really that kind of stimulates me in a way that beginning with, you know, a bunch of wizards in the forest wouldn't.
Sure. Well, I think the other thing the movie has going for it is the sort of dark imagery. Now that Ralph Fiennes is sort of joined the cast and he is Lord Voldemort, and we're seeing him in Harry's dreams, and all those dream sequences are really cool and good in this movie. I really like all of that imagery.
Yeah. It's it really works on a visual level mostly.
Yeah. Well, and so the beginning of this movie, we have a Dementor attack.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harry goes to Grimmauld Place and has to, you know, he has to convene at a bit of a trial. Is that the front loading you really liked? All of that?
Yeah, it turns into a little bit of a courtroom drama,
right?
Which I specifically remember disliking about Young Guns 2, but I'm welcoming here because
you do seem to flutter back and forth between things you like in one movie and things you don't like in another movie. Even in our last movie, because you said all it is set pieces about sports.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Live Free or Die Hard we talked about, and all that is set pieces. But we like that movie.
But I guess I like the connective tissue between them.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say that it's not a sport. It's not, you know, John McClane's not competing in the Die Hard Olympics. He kind of is in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true, but I just, you know, I like the shift, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, well, with Young Guns, it was like, this is a Western, I don't want it to become a courtroom drama. Here, I'm like, I don't want it to go back to... You want it to stay in its lane? Yeah, I don't want it to be a magic film for a bit. And if this is the vehicle for that, then I'm fine
Then you're on board.
Yeah.
Well, and so what's your take on... Yeah. What's your take on, because we find out in that courtroom scene, they have a witness, so you have Mrs. Figg, you know, helping out because she's a neighbor that's been next to Harry the whole time. I don't know how much you got that. You know, in the books, it's very like she's a neighbor and he has to often go to her house, but she never lets on that she's a squib or knows anything about magic. She just thinks she's I
don't even know what a squib is, Mike. So you're fighting a losing battle here.
I'm not even gonna tell you.
I thought it was interesting. Just, you know, again, trying to link this to things that I know about, and I'm not completely out of my depth on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we have a bit of a sequel inversion here. Like Harry being expelled for using magic in the real world, am I right in thinking in the last movie he's rewarded for doing that? Am I entirely wrong? Or in a previous movie?
No, because
at some point someone's like, it's good that you use magic in the real world, right? Some point someone said that.
Well, by wizarding law, you have to be 17. And then you have... So, right, anybody under 17 has a trace upon them. So if you do magic outside of school, the ministry knows right away.
Is this something they talked about in the first movie, or did I miss it?
No, it's talked about in other movies.
Okay. So it's... Sorry I didn't appreciate the intricacies of wizard law.
Yeah.
So it's so now it's not good that he... No, wait. So it's good. So when he does it before, it's like he's being tried as a as a minor, and
Yes.
they're like letting him off the hook, and now it's like you can't do this because you're over 17.
Right. Well, and basically the
Okay.
whole thing that's going. I mean, I'm sure you picked up on this. Mostly the
Don't
ministry.
don't be too sure.
Mostly the ministry just wants to discredit Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore for anything and everything they've said about Voldemort coming back, because that means that the public will look upon
Yeah.
the ministry as having lost control.
Yeah.
So if these two people are saying this, they get to say it's nonsense, and look, this boy's a criminal because he did magic outside of school. We're going to kick him out of school. That's how bad a kid he is, so you can't believe anything he says.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, like coming off the, how Britain went to war in the early 2000s. Very kind of similar situation of the government were spinning a lie that went against the democratic will and also known facts.
Yeah.
Like at the same time, and I definitely get that flavor from these scenes that this is a comment on that. That's how I read it.
Right.
Because that's what we were going through as a culture. It's like how can you ignore that amount of people and that amount of facts? Little did we know it was
You
the
just
tip of the
have to
iceberg.
choose to. Yeah.
Little did we know.
Where
It almost looks quaint now.
we didn't realize then that it would be a way of life.
Exactly. But and that's exactly what the Minister of Magic is trying to normalize.
Right. Yeah.
And also, control over wizard education.
Mm-hmm.
Which was always a point of controversy. And I think J.K. Rowling was a teacher, right? Am I right in thinking that?
I don't actually know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But certainly that idea of...
That certainly
how-
seems
how much the
worrisome
state
and
should-
suspect now.
Well, because Umbridge is... not necessarily. She just received an award from a literary award for writing that dreadful and untrue anti-trans essay. So who the
She
fuck
won an
knows?
award?
Yeah, she was awarded. I don't know the details of it, but she was awarded this bullshit kind of, oh well, we didn't like the argument, but the way she put it was very clever sort of award. And I'm like, fuck you,
Oh, wow.
fuck all of you.
Well, on that happy
Anti-trans.
note, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll get into the meat of this story of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Sound good?
Sure.
All right, then. Back after this. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
Stay on target.
and check out the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to...
Stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to...
Stay on target.
That's the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we're back. Tom and I are here discussing the 2007 film Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Tom, what shenanigans are going on in this movie? What's it about?
Well, it is about the installment of a government spy in Hogwarts.
Right.
Taking Imelda Staunton
And how great is she, by the
Yeah,
way?
as Umbridge,
She's great
I
in this
mean,
role.
we've talked in every episode about how the defense of the dark arts teacher, Love Boat style guest spot is
Right.
is kind of filled every time by possibly the best person you can imagine, and it doesn't stop here.
To do the role,
Like
right.
this is you know this is at one point, you know, they give it to a regular, but still at this point we're getting these absolute national treasures playing these roles.
right.
And again, you know, the Pentangeli effect, this is an entirely different kind of character. I mean, she's a
Right,
straight
yeah.
up villain in that role. Before
Big
you
time.
know, Branagh was a kind of was villainous to some extent, but that wasn't
right,
the point
but
of him.
bumbling and yeah.
Lupin was obviously an ally and mentor. Moody was, I don't know, a magic robot. I don't know what was going on.
A criminal. Yeah. A criminal in disguise.
And I thought that, you know, you disputed this earlier on, but I'm sure that in this movie, he remains at the school, but they're not. The real Moody is now at the school.
He's not at the school.
He's there when they do the first assembly. And they say, like, he's going to be hanging around doing some stuff for us. Just like that.
You're nuts.
Those are Dumbledore's exact words. Anyway.
Moody's here. He's going to do some stuff for us. No.
But
wrong.
but it's interesting how, like,
he's at the beginning. He helps get Potter to Grimmauld Place. And I don't think you see him until the
sure
end.
he's in the assembly scene. Anyway.
In the big battle.
I'll defer to you on that, even though you're wrong. But yeah,
let us know, everybody, Mike or Tom. Is Moody working
don't make
these
Tom
these
know
how
people
wrong
watch
he
a
is.
Harry Potter movie.
Should they want to, dumbass? You're the only person that hates this movie series.
Hey, I
because you're a monster.
I am at worst ambivalent about this series. I was like, I'm three, you know, four bad, three good for something
right.
that I apparently despise. It's pretty good.
Well, but
anyway, she's installed there, and you know, at some point there's a Harry Potter starts like a kind of secret society within the school.
Dumbledore's army,
which is a
Tom.
cross between like a World War II underground resistance and Dead Poets Society. And when they are exposed as kind of working against this new government mandated syllabus, it's used as an excuse for the government to basically turn it into a horror of horrors, a state school. Woo!
Yeah.
And there's some kids get tortured in a
Yes.
really chilling scene, made all the more chilling by the blood quill. Made all the more chilling that it's not spectacular in any way or particularly gory. You're just watching kids like scrawl scars into their arms.
Into their hands, right? And that's visceral.
In a completely deadpan way, which makes it really sinister, I think.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's.
I can imagine and feel the pain on the back of my hand.
It was a really nice.
As Harry is, writing.
It was a really nice choice. I think
lines.
if Chris Columbus would have tried to alleviate that uncomfortable feeling. Whereas I think David Yates is very.
What do you mean by changing it to something else or having comedy?
Yeah, like
into
would
right after,
seem
or
kind of like funnier or less threatening. But I think David Yates is sort of, and again, I think this is about what's going on in the background. With state-sanctioned torture happening, in the world in Iraq. it's very much saying, you know, torture's torture, guys.
Yeah.
I think it's taken very, very seriously because it's going on in a real world sense.
Because we're dealing with it, in real life.
That was my feeling about it anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, and the rest
But another big kind of side story for this movie is young love again.
Is it?
Relationships are building. Harry with Cho.
Oh
With
yeah,
Cho
but he
Chang.
dumps her for a more
gets his-
Aryan-looking woman, so it doesn't matter in the end.
That's not until the next.
No,
movie.
at the end of this movie, they make it clear that he's done with her because she's a kind of turncoat, right? Cho's sort of.
Yeah, but not by choice. She was given the Veritaserum.
Well, Harry seems to think that she had a choice.
He doesn't know
Okay.
until later. I'm trying to remember it now.
Well, no,
that's
it's just
ever-
like we.
Is that ever revealed in the movie? That's part of the book.
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person.
No, yeah, because Snape says they learn about Cho Chang's taking a potion to make her tell the truth against her will, but it's never really brought up again.
You know, it says something to me about the shortcomings of Goblet of Fire, the previous movie, that I never got a sense that Cedric dying was a big deal until this movie. It is all
Right.
people are talking about, and it is as if this character has been with us since the beginning, when in fact he was only in the previous movie and barely speaks.
and
And so I'm like, this movie does actually quite a good job of convincing you, like retconning the last movies in
how important he was in the lives of
to
certainly Cho Chang, and
establish Cedric as an important character as he obviously is, because of the way this movie treats them, and the whole sort of love triangle thing, which with Harry, Cho, and Cedric, or Dedrick, as I like to call him now from this point onwards.
You heartless bastard.
So I kind of thought, I thought that was interesting. I think my note was something like, well, turns out Cedric's an important character. Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I really like the moment. There's lots of good moments in these movies where there's a delineation between men and women, and when Harry's explaining that he kissed Cho, but that it was mostly wet because she was crying, and then Hermione has to explain to them everything that Cho is feeling. That she likes Harry, but she feels guilty because of Cedric. It's, it kind of goes on and on. Ron says, how could any one person feel all of that at once? And she says, well, not everybody has the emotional, the emotional equivalent of a teaspoon. It's fantastic.
I'm glad that you got all that out of the scene. I thought it was a little bit weird that Harry was describing his first kiss to his male and female best friend. But
is that not something British people
as
do?
we know, J.K. Rowling is gender blind. Yeah.
We Americans are always talking about who we're hooking up with.
But it was definitely what I liked is there was a lot less of the horny teenager vibe that we had from the last movie. That was kind of played down, and I was enamored with that.
All right.
It felt, those interactions, like they felt proportional to the plot in a way that they didn't in the last movie for me.
Okay.
So yeah, I could there's a kind of, I think it's just it's about saying we'll let.
Do you think that's a director thing? Do you think
don't know.
that David Yates just gets that tone better or right? Or is it everything? Is it like the script? Is it the acting? Is it?
It's everything. But I without stereotyping Mike Newell versus David Yates too much, I suspect that David Yates would probably, well, I don't know. He directed Deathly Hallows, so what does he know about indulgence? But certainly at this point, I think there is a drive to make this a more plot-driven movie. Does that scan for you? It doesn't feel. It doesn't.
I was thinking about that earlier when we started talking about what this movie is about, because plot-wise, it's not like the other movies in which, hey, somebody's escaped from Azkaban and he might try to get into Hogwarts. There's a dangerous person. In the last one, you have the Goblet of Fire, so you know that we're going to have these games going on.
That's not plot. That's just set pieces.
But that's what the movie's about. The movie's about the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah. But this movie's about actual, like a story with stakes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the stakes that start to. There's a sense. I don't know. There's a sense of we're not playing around anymore. Quite literally, in the last movie.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting to me. Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting to me is that the stakes are higher, but the kids aren't necessarily trying to solve a problem or solve a mystery.
Interesting.
In the way that they are in other movies.
I agreed. Yeah.
It's a lot more of just going to classes. And I think I mentioned this before. This is one of my downgrades for this movie is the book for this particular book is like one of the biggest books, but this is the shortest movie. And they solve that problem through lots of musical montages. So this movie feels retrograde to the 80s in a way for that. And I'm not advocating, don't split it into two movies.
God, no.
No.
God, no.
But...
Well, I don't know, the leanness of it, I mean, again, maybe I'm prejudicial, but...
Of course you are.
But despite that,
That goes without saying.
I feel like, there's also a case of part of what any adaptation does is prioritize. And to me, this prioritized the most interesting things about this story.
What are those?
Well, the Ministry of Magic and government propaganda. The fight back against the evils of the
injustice
evils of the state. That is a more interest. That
you have a point there that with in the guise of that context, that does make this movie more interesting than maybe it's hard too because you haven't read the book.
Yeah, and I'm always grateful.
As audience members we should separate because they're two different mediums. But when you love a book, everybody loves a book, and you judged it. You judge those movies based on the books.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for.
It's hard not to.
That I don't have to read the books, but I'm also grateful that this movie doesn't make me feel like I want to read the books. I mean, there is clearly, as you're talking, I realize that there's many levels here that I'm not cognizant of. But I'm kind of.
Will you feel you're blissfully unaware?
I'm kind of fine with that. I don't feel like I'm missing out, but I can if I stand outside myself.
Oh, you are.
I can see that there are a lot that the kind of ongoing story arc of this movie is kind of handled in a very muddled way.
Well, and that's what I was trying to refer to earlier.
I mean,
right?
I don't know what the reintroduction of Grouch Jr. is really all about. David Tennant.
Of what? Oh,
it seems like. Yeah, it's sort of. It speeds through a lot of things that probably need more attention, but because I like the thrust of the movie, I'm happy to ignore them. But I mean, It's interesting. I mean, this movie to me really crystallized this question of like, am I watching this as a sequel or as a literary adaptation in an ongoing series?
Well, and that's the thing that's really interesting about this series to begin with, is because all these movies are based on another piece of material.
Right.
And so they differ from most of the series we've done.
Yeah. Except for Die Hard.
On that basis. Yeah, but
most of which is based on a novel.
You can't. Yeah, like most of that was not
I'm
written
not serious.
for Die Hard.
They
just,
serious.
Yeah. All right.
Die Hard is many things. A literary adaptation, it is not.
And we talked about in that one, like the one thing that was written for Die Hard specifically is a piece of shit. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that. Well, it raised a couple of questions. The first is, I realize while watching this movie, it's like I don't need to worry about the fact that this is an adaptation and that it's a serial storyline, because this movie shows me that a sequel is a sequel is a sequel. All that point of view, memory, magic stuff doesn't fool me. This is a sequel, so we're showing old footage again. And also something happened.
Tom's not going to let go of his imbas, I'll tell you that much.
The other point is I thought, at one point in the movie, Hagrid's hitherto unmentioned brother turns up. And I'm like, yeah, this is just a sequel. I can understand this. I know where this movie's coming from. But then the other point...
Well, what did you think of Hagrid, having been missing for so long? Did you miss him at the front end of this movie? Or... Because that's the thing. Yeah. That's the other thing about these movies is, as each movie goes along, you add characters, and you're not always taking characters away, and so
it's like a tag team.
Sometimes they feel like they're busting at the seams.
Well, it's like a tag team, and there's this constant push and pull of the supporting cast, and it's very
But for the most part, I think they do that really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Throughout
but
the
it's
series.
also made very plain. Dumbledore stands up and said, "Professor Hagrid is on leave," and I'm like, well, he's not going to be in at least half of this movie, if at all.
Right.
And then we have a moment where it is literally one out, one in with Gary Oldman and David Thewlis.
Yeah,
where he disappears into a silk screen. When they go to the Chamber of Cameos. Whatever that place is in the Ministry. And Gary Oldman disappears and doesn't Lupin say something like, okay, now it's me for a bit. Like something along those lines. He's like, okay, I'm taking over. So it is like this tag team push and pull, and they're very upfront about it. Like they don't do, I guess what a lot of sequels do is try and pretend that the people you love are in the movie more than they're actually in it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we get Gary Oldman back after a movie in which he was only a fireplace.
Right. He only appears via coals. And in this one, we talked about that last time. That whole fire talking is much better in this movie.
Oh my God, it looks so much better.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder whether, it's just time, improvement of effects. They figured out how to do it, or whether directorially it is. Because I think there's a lot of things in Goblet of Fire that look cheaper than they have to, and you had that revelation about budget, which I didn't think was possible that a Harry Potter movie could run out of money.
I was surprised to learn that there was any sort of limitation on budget.
But it definitely things look cheap and nasty in that movie, and they don't here.
Yeah.
And obviously time, we effects move on very quickly, but I think it's definitely about the care and the way you light
and also
and
just
the way
choice.
You integrate.
Yeah, exactly. How you integrate it. Right. All right. Well, let's take another break, and then when we come back, we'll finish up Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
But not the series, sadly.
Oh no, we're still going, baby.
We're not even halfway. Are we halfway? We've got to be halfway.
We're halfway.
Okay.
Yeah. right after this. We'll be right back. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
Stay on target.
and check out the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
Stay on target.
find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
Stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we're back. Tom and I are, of course, here still discussing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Tom, there's a few things I want to talk about. One, I want to get your read on the teenage anger of Harry in this movie, which is really present in the book. And of course, in a book, you can go far more into his thoughts and feelings and how he wishes he couldn't be as angry as he was, but he can't help it and blah, to that extent. Does it work for you in the movie?
I didn't get the angst. I got the sense that we're at this point we're trying to turn Harry into a full-blown anti-hero. But
yeah, you've talked
also,
about that
a little bit
before.
of a little bit of deniability to sort of say, the point where he's possessed and he starts to shout, "Look at me!" It's like
Right.
It's that kind of, you've got that built-in deniability. It's like, oh, he was possessed, but it's also still going
Well,
on.
and that's
it's
also
clearly all still going on in his psyche.
Yeah. And that's another bit of a subplot, this idea that Dumbledore is ignoring him the entire school term. And even before, at the trial. Which I think is pretty humanizing, this idea that as brilliant as Dumbledore is, he makes mistakes. And if he had been sharing with Harry what his thoughts and concerns, none of this might have happened.
Well, isn't it all revealed to be part of a Uber plan?
It's all part of an Uber
that
plan.
Involves having to keep Harry in the dark.
But part of the only reason part of the reason that plan works is that Harry's manipulated by Voldemort in a way that might not have happened if Dumbledore had said, Voldemort might try to manipulate you, which he just never says until the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I think the moral ambiguity of Harry's coming into play more at certain points in this movie, but he's also taking far more of a leadership role.
Yeah, I mean,
he becomes a teacher and also a.
Umbridge won't teach them proper defense against the dark arts, and Harry takes over.
So he's a leader, a teacher, a kind of freedom fighter almost. So
right.
It's coming of age. In the last movie, it was kind of coming of age in nearly all sexual terms, and this is about coming of age.
Yes.
In terms of how you handle the world around you. So that's more interesting to me. It's a more interesting art to explore from Harry. So, but I don't know. Yeah, if angst was what's supposed to be there, I definitely didn't really get that.
You didn't get his palpable anger, though? He's short with all his friends. He's always yelling at them. At some point, Hermione is saying, Stop snapping at us,
them,
Harry.
So I don't see that as abnormal. Be a better actor. Don't make so many bad choices.
God damn it. How dare you?
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, I'll buy it. But it.
Well, I'm interested because I'm interested in the idea that it didn't register with you as much, considering how much a part of the book it is. And so maybe, when you're a fan and read the books, maybe you're seeing more than somebody coming in cold.
I don't know. I mean, all my notes of referring to that are in the next movie. I didn't get much of it here. That he starts to become a real cocky douche in the next movie. Maybe I'm just, I have a bad temper and I don't notice when people on screen have a bad temper. Because it seems normal, normal to me. I mean, one of the curious things, this is obviously about storytelling, not just character, but he gets a chance to learn the secret of his scar. Did it say, don't you want to know the secrets of your scar? And he says, I've waited 14 years. I can wait a little bit longer. And I thought that was interesting. That seems to me a very mature choice. It's obviously really about, we've got 3 more movies and 3 more books right. Or 2 more books to explore this. But sure. It's like you feel like this kind of, at the beginning of this movie, he might have been more impetuous, having not gone through this kind of baptism of fire as a kind of a soldier, like a general in the war against Voldemort. Well, no, it's not against Voldemort, is it? It's against the state and them trying to cover up Voldemort.
True.
That's Voldemort. I made the comparison to Blofeld, but in terms of screen time and how much the movie's interested in, right. Voldemort really is the Blofeld of this movie. He just pops up like, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to be the villain?
Aren't I the baddie?
You can all do this all yourselves without me. So yeah, there was definitely a lot going on in kind of Harry's arc.
Well, I think that's one of the complaints I have against this movie are in that vein, the idea of how much is going on. You referred to Hagrid's brother.
He looks like a motion capture James Corden.
Yeah, and so we have Grop and
the Centaurs.
I mean, I don't have a problem. Like, when you read the book, you don't have a problem because you have this great, big, beautiful book, so you can go through it, and it all feels rushed in the movie.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, we talked, say, in Prisoner of Azkaban, how good the digital effects look in that movie for a lot of the mythical creatures. And I don't think Grop looks very good digitally in this movie. The Thestrals look good, I think.
Are they the Centaurs?
Yeah, the sort of winged horses that they go to the Ministry
the Native
on.
Americans of the Harry Potter universe.
There you go.
So it is a Western.
And we talked in the last. Yeah. And story-wise, we were talking. I think we gave a lot of play in the last episode. We were talking about how much or how little the house elves are in the movies, and Dobby and all of that. And the one, there's things missing in this movie that bother me. And one of the things that miss me, or that really bother me, is in the book there's a scene, and they have it in the movie, in which Harry breaks into Umbridge's office, and he's just trying to, because her office is the only office they can use for the flu powder, which is the fireplace. Stick your head in the fireplace and go to another fireplace network, which I'm sure you don't know, but So
I know that Gary
he's
Oldman
just
appears
trying
as a
to
fire.
well, that's yeah. So he's going the other way. He's trying to get to Grimmauld Place's fireplace to just see if Sirius is okay, because he has seen a vision that he's being tortured by
Which
Voldemort.
was like, I thought that was very Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, very much. And he gets into the office, but Umbridge, in the book, he actually puts his face into the fire, but Sirius isn't there. And it's Sirius's house elf that tells him the master's gone. And he's lying. And so this is what propels Harry to take the drastic steps that he does, taking the Thestrals, getting on brooms, he and all of his friends going to the Ministry and trying to thwart Voldemort. And all of that's left out in the movie.
Right.
So, in my mind,
It's a little bit contrived, though, wouldn't you say, from a storytelling point of view, for it to all be based on a misunderstanding?
Yeah, well, but what I like about it is because there's other stuff. Like Harry just wants to leave. He takes it as in the book. Let's go. We have to leave now. And it's Hermione that says, "Harry, you don't even know if these are real visions. It might not be. It could be a trick. We have to find out for sure."
That's in the movie, right? I have a note about that. That's in the movie.
But they never find out for sure. My point is, they never find out for sure.
Okay,
He never goes to Grimmauld Place. Shit just happens. They all get caught by Umbridge.
And this is the first time we've seen a house elf since Chamber of Secrets, right? And he's a piece of shit. In this movie, he's a piece of shit. I think he's...
In this movie, he's a piece of shit. In the book, it's more explained if Sirius had just been kinder.
Oh, good. Because that's my point.
Yes.
That's always my point.
So Dumbledore's making the point that if Sirius had been kinder, then none of this would have happened. But at the same time, Dumbledore has to admit that if he had just been honest with Harry from the start, none of this would have happened.
Well, I mean...
And all of that's very interesting to me. The choices we make, whether we're wizards or human beings, the frailty of who we are can cause great damage. And it does in this movie. I mean, Sirius dies.
Well, he turns into a silkscreen. And is regenerates into David.
Always
Thewlis's
gotta
Doctor.
try and burn everything down.
No, I'm not
Salting the earth, Tom Stewart.
I'm really interested in what you're saying, because that's my standard defense about the elves is like, stop treating them like shit, and things will go better because they're slaves.
Right.
You shouldn't be keeping them in the first place, and you shouldn't be mistreating them when you have them. But in this movie, it just seemed like, the moral quandary was taken out of the picture because the elf was a piece of shit. So it's like we don't even have to think about that because he's not even one of the good ones.
Right, but the thing is the idea is, why is he a piece of shit? And it's because he's been treated like a piece of shit for so long.
And there's no... You've told me all that. I didn't get any of that from the movie. And
And it's all based on prejudices, right?
Well,
I mean, Sirius hated his family. There's a really great scene when Harry's talking to Sirius in the room with the wallpaper that has his family tree on it. And he's talking about how he hated the lot of them, and how he hated his family, and how he's always welcome at the Potter house. And
what have the slaves of the house got to do with that?
Well, because he hated his family, he hates the house elf that serves that family. And because they were all dark wizard leaning, let's say, maybe supportive of Voldemort when Voldemort first had
moderate
power.
Evil. They're kind of the on the Steve Schmidt spectrum. They're kind of moderate evil.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a big problem with this. If it's explained in the books, fine. But I think in the same way that this movie is pretty bold in how it depicts anything that approaches torture visually and thematically as something that is morally abhorrent. There should be some comment on the elves in the same way. I guess we get there kind of, but in the by the end of the series. But
if he'd just been kinder to Creature, Tom,
yeah,
everything would have been okay.
And but I don't get that. That didn't occur to me until you filled me in on that background. And when I saw the house elf, I was like, I really hope he's not a piece of shit, and he was a piece of shit. Because all the work you've done with
But
Dobby
that's one of the
is
things
undone.
that bothers me,
All the work.
There are some missing holes that I think are really important in this movie.
Clearly.
And there's stuff where they felt like the audience had to see some stuff, but it's all done over musical montages.
Correct.
And then the one last thing that kind of bothers me is I fluctuate between there's things that I like and dislike in the entire kind of last scene, the battle scene. And especially when they go into the prophecy room and all the orbs are there, it's very clear that this is a completely digital environment. Now, I'm not saying you have to build 20-story high shelves with glass orbs
Why
on
not?
them, but... Well, I mean, I'm not saying. What I'm saying is not an entire room that's a mile long.
Yeah.
But yes, give me
Do something
10.
physical.
Yeah, give me something physical, because I think the movie suffers from that, and that whole thing is far different from the book, which I'm actually okay with. Both how they finally get to that. There's lots of other rooms they go into, and.
Yeah, I didn't need them to go in any other rooms.
No, yeah. So all of that's not necessary. The veil scene where they actually battle between good and evil, I like that a little bit more, but you can tell it's also a lot of digital stuff going on.
I had the overall feeling that the sort of last act of this movie is fairly slapdash in a lot of regards.
You think so?
I mean, we've seen some really inventive use of the end credits. Here it just feels like, just get them out. It's like, are you going to do something with that script effect? No, just get it out. This movie, I'm done with it, And it was just, in that last act, I sort of felt, well, I mean, they're storytelling decisions and they're probably in the book, but, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with Harry dumping the girl of color for the most Aryan-looking female character in the movie. All that sort of stuff. It just felt kind of like suddenly they were making a lot of bad choices, all in this part of the movie. But maybe that's just me. I don't think you need.
What'd you think of the final battle?
I don't think you need the spinning newspaper. The images are already animated.
Dumbledore and Potter vindicated.
And also,
like
how
Batman
hard
style?
must it be to write about Voldemort in a newspaper?
Right.
Because you can't say his name. So it'll just be like,
he who must not be named.
yeah,
Tom.
it's like when you talk about ISIS, you have to say so-called Islamic State, or you're
let
endorsing
me ask you
them
this.
as the Islamic version of Israel.
Let me ask you this: what did you think? Because it's very different from the book, but I still really like this wizard battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort. Did that work for you? Uh-oh.
I don't remember that. When did that happen?
Sirius dies.
Right.
Bellatrix kills Sirius. In the book, Dumbledore actually comes into that room to solve some shit. But not in the movie. He shows up in out of one of the fireplaces and says, "You shouldn't have come here tonight, Tom." And then they have,
Yeah.
like a huge fire dragon.
Is this
Voldemort creates.
is this
and
where
then
it's
Dumbledore surrounds him in water, and then he breaks all the windows, and he comes down, and Dumbledore kind of puts a shield in front of him that turns it into sand. I like all of that.
sounds pretty
Different than the
sounds
book,
good the way
but-
that you're describing it. I have zero memory of it.
Jesus.
Uh,
That's funny.
Sure. Sounds good. What else you got?
I don't know. That's about it. I mean,
There's got to be more, right? Or is this a very slight? Is this slight compared to the other movies?
no, it's, movie 4 and 5, I've got problems with, but I still love them. I can't help myself, Tom. They're still great.
I liked bringing Filch to the center of the movie.
Okay.
Umbridge was a really good vehicle for that because we haven't seen enough of him. I love David Bradley.
He's great.
And I love the idea of him as this kind of like kowtowing, minion of Umbridge. Like that was the role he was waiting for all these years. Presumably he has some kind of backstory that I'm not interested in, but... Right? I bet he has a backstory. Is he in Fantastic Beasts?
He's a squib.
As I have already said on this episode, I don't know what a squib is, so that doesn't help me.
A squib, I'll go ahead and tell you. A squib is a person born of magical lineage that has no magical powers or little magical powers.
Right, so he's an impotent wizard.
Yeah, there you go.
He's a sterile wizard.
All right, look, my final word on this movie is, even though, I have problems with it, like you, visually I find this movie to be stunning in some places.
Yeah.
You were talking about the sort of black look of the Ministry and that kind of, there's so much stuff in this movie that I like, despite all the problems I have, and there's just not, this is a good movie for me.
Well, that's a good movie.
End of the day.
And it's a good movie from me. Good movie.
I think we'll leave it right there. I like your last words being good movie.
Yeah, and this is as good as it gets for me. From now on.
Obviously.
Well, not as good as it gets, but this is as good as it will be. Although I did want to rate, I'll tell you what's a good note to go out on, leading into the next episode. I actually, in looking over my notes and thinking about these two movies together, thinking about Half-Blood Prince and Order of the Phoenix, I actually think these movies work well as one movie. Perhaps better than Deathly Hallows does, in a weird way. I think about it, and you won't be surprised at the comparison I'm making here. But I'm thinking, on the podcast James Bonding, they're always pushing the idea that the best way to see Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace is as one movie. That's the best version of both those movies. And I kind of feel the same here. These movies kind of dovetail, they cancel out each other's shortcomings. But, as with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, one is clearly better than the other, and I think Order of Phoenix is clearly better than Half-Blood Prince for me. But, actually, when you look at them together, they jibe in a way that's kind of interesting. And, as will be no surprise given my rankings and declarations, a more interesting couple of movies than the two-part movies in this franchise.
Well, we'll get into it, because I ranked 6 above 5.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of good
was-
in 6. A lot of good.
I was surprised by that because 6 is the one I've seen the least, but I was surprised how much I enjoyed it on a rewatch. But what we'll talk about is I think that one's adapted really well. So again, I'm coming at this from a book and movie lover. And it's interesting to hear your takes based just on seeing the movies.
And by the way, I just want to clarify, I do read books. Just not these books.
Very good then. We'll end it there. If you have
I don't want people thinking that I'm
movies,
illiterate. It's starting to sound like because I haven't read the Harry Potter series, I've never read a book.
I hate books. Tom Stewart, book hater.
Like the Bond books, I've read those.
Very good. Of course you have. How could you not? Ladies and gentlemen, please find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram or Twitter, and send us a message. You could write us an email at theeverythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart from Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz from the How Dare You Awards. Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.